It would help if I muted myself. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion following the screening of The Social Dilemma. I'm Shauna Davis, Director of Technology and Digital Education at Marlborough, and we are thrilled to have you with us this evening. Just a few logistics before we get started. We are recording this evening's event. You will notice that the Q&A is turned off, but we do welcome any follow-up questions after the event. We would love to continue the conversation. And we would also just like to let you know that the event might go a little bit longer than 7:30. Please stay with us as long as you are able. As I shared with those of you who are with us for the screening of the film, this event was truly inspired by our students and created in partnership with the Educational and Counseling Services Department. We have a phenomenal panel of female leaders with us tonight, including Marlborough students. And our moderator this evening, Eva Rodriguez from the class of 2022, is one of those phenomenal leaders. She is a member of Marlborough's debate team. She is the recipient of the Presidential Award of Service from the National Charity League 5 years running. And she is co-president of OLE, Marlborough's Latinx identity-based group. Eva, thank you so much for leading the event this evening, and I turn it over to you to introduce the rest of the panel.
Hi, thank you so much, Ms. Davis. I'm so excited to be here. So to start for our panelists, we have Ms. Oxley Toure, who graduated Marlborough in 2002 and currently serves as the counsel for the media and entertainment of Pryor Cashman. We have Ms. Daniels, whose daughter Charlotte graduated in 2019, who's currently the global head of original content at YouTube. We have Dr. Heitner, who's the author of Screenwise, the blog Raising Digital Natives. We have Dr. Crandall, who's the Director of Educational and Counseling Services, and Ms. Beck, who is the Dean of Wellness. We have 5 student panelists, Shine Park and Leah Dimsu, who are in 11th grade with me, and then 3 7th graders, Karena Mehta, Brooke Bloor, and Rachel Chen. Okay, I guess we'll just get started. Okay, so I felt like it's necessary to debrief from the documentary first, which was pretty incredible. So first, this question is for you, Ms. Oxley Toure. How does the quote, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, connect to your work with tech and media companies?
Thanks, Eva. Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on this panel. I'm really excited to share and hear from all of you, and love the documentary. Like Eva said, I am counsel in Pryor Cashman's Media and Entertainment Group. It's a law firm headquartered in New York. I'm in the LA office, and my practice intersects film, television, and music with the tech industry now more than ever. And I do represent one of the social media platforms that was listed in the documentary. So, you know, and I've also had experience before social media became what it was. And really, you know, quiet it is kept, we've always been the product. My first job out of undergrad was working for CAA, which is a talent agency, in business affairs, which is the legal department of the agency. And it was 2006. And at the time, there were, you know, MySpace was the biggest platform that was out. And so, you know, talent agencies represent celebrities. So there were deals from AOL Time Warner and Yahoo and MySpace, and they wanted the celebrity talent to do something on the platform, record a video, share photographs, create a web series. And the company hadn't seen deals like this before. And so I was a part of, you know, some of the conversations around, you know, what's being monetized here? Like, how are our clients actually going to make money? What is it? What does all of this mean? Who owns the rights? And, you know, what we have realized over time is that there's a metric system for every website, and advertisers make deals based on that metric system. So without going and, you know, belaboring you with too much of the minutia, the impressions were mentioned in the documentary. And advertisers will ask platforms and websites, you know, how much will it cost to get 1,000 people to view my advertisement? And that's the cost per, that's the metric. Impressions are usually monetized in about 1,000 rather. So that's always been the business model. I think in the revenue stream has changed, and the formulas have changed, and the deals have changed, costs have changed over time, depending on how many users you have on your platform. But I think, this idea of how to make money from a site has always been around. Well, not always, but since we've been on the internet like we have. And with the advent of broadband, I think advertisers have become more interested in this form of advertising, because consumers are able to get on platforms faster, stay on websites for longer. And now that we're in a global pandemic, it's even more of a monetization opportunity with streaming and just the way that people are consuming content is online. So in the field that I'm in, I've seen the evolution over time of us being the product, the actual users being what advertisers are paying for. They want me to click through their advertisement and make a purchase. And that is, tracked very seriously behind the scenes. And as it was pointed out in the documentary, gets more and more refined each year based on consumer attention.
I totally agree. Thank you so much. That was really insightful. So kind of moving on, this is a question for everyone, including the student panelists. What was your immediate response to the film? And do you feel that it will have a long-term impact on your relationship with social media? And then specifically to the 7th and 11th graders, how does the story depicting the teenagers that's kind of weaved in through the storyboard of the documentary, how do you relate to that story, or does it resonate with you? Anyone can start, or I can just call in somebody.
I mean, I can go. The teenage stories, I think I related to all three of them. I go through phases of not using my phone because I'm aware of how it can cause addiction, and then I go through phases of being completely addicted to my phone, and it's become a struggle of trying to balance that, especially during these times of always being online for school. I mean, I'm on Zoom like 8 hours a day, and should I include I'm on my phone another 3 hours? So, I mean, the teenage stories definitely resonated with me in terms of the different aspects and the different stories of each one and how it differed and how I relate to each one.
I guess I can go next. I know I often find myself picking my phone up for no reason just to look at it, and it really shows how addicted teenagers are to their phones. They can't even be in the same room as their phone without looking at it. And kids nowadays also need to have their phone near or on their body. They just stick their phones in their pockets or their backpacks, and to have their phone away from them really makes them feel anxious and just gives them anxiety of not being near it.
I guess I can go next. So I agree with Brooke a lot. So basically, when I'm in a room with my phone, I check it every 5 minutes to see if there's a notification or something, even when I know that there wouldn't be a notification. And sometimes on Instagram, I'm surprised at how it gives me the recommendations, because it all seems to be I don't know how they figure out who I know or what accounts I would be interested in.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rachel. We would love to hear from Dr. Heitner or Ms. Beck or Ms. Daniels if you guys have any commentary on this.
I felt like the portrayals of the kids were a little extreme, actually. I mean, I don't know if you all didn't feel thrown under the bus, then that's good to know. But I felt like it was a little extreme and a little. I mean, I know that they were trying to make a point and sort of dramatize, but that was actually probably my least favorite part of the documentary. But I also understand why they did it, and it obviously would be really hard to sort of get into an actual family and get a more ethnographic view of, you know, like what people are doing with their phones. And obviously the fact is they do know, right? They do know every time, and they can tell where on the websites you're looking and all that. And it's, you know, yeah, the idea that we're products, I think it's important that we don't feel totally disempowered by the social dilemma, because yes, we are products, but we still have opportunities to use these tools for powerful, positive ends if we choose. It's also totally fine if we see something like this and we want to abstain. So I'm not suggesting that we must be part of social media, but I do think there are a lot of young people and grown-ups using social media for really important and positive ends. And so I think so much of it is about the user and their choices, and as well as the way the company may be guiding you. And I love the little hacks that they suggested toward the end of like, choose a different video, or, you know, people putting their phone on grayscale, or, you know, different things that people are doing to try to kind of win back a little bit of control. I know for me, taking a certain app off my phone and only using it on my laptop is a good way for me to assert control or making choices, sometimes even using apps to lock myself out of certain apps at certain times. But you know, for me as an author and someone engaging on this stuff every day, you know, abstaining doesn't feel like the right choice. But I do, you know, feel frustrated by the ways that the algorithms are steering me. And I think, of course, there are levels of that none of us are conscious of too, that, you know, and even, and this is where even these execs talking about not letting their kids do it is interesting. But I think what an opportunity to mentor your kids on how to do it right, versus, again, having this kind of cold turkey approach, I feel like leaves their kids a little out in the cold. Like, what are their kids going to do when they're researching colleges? Are they not going to go on the internet? Like, are they never going to write a paper where they need to use search? I mean, I just think, yes, it's important to know about the filter bubble. And yes, you also need to know how to use search. I don't think you can be in certainly middle school or high school or college and not understand search. So I think it's a little bit, you know, too simplistic to just say, well, we're keeping our kids off of it. Like, they have to have some kind of plan, you know, at some point for teaching their kids how to use it.
I was very much impacted by the documentary, both personally and professionally. I started noticing that I had just got a puppy right around the time that I watched the documentary, and all of a sudden my Instagram ads were just like puppy beds and puppy this and dog this. And so I was like, okay, that's weird. I made the decision for myself to delete all social media, and by all I had Instagram, and that was it. So I deleted Instagram completely. So I've been Instagram free, social media free for about 6 weeks, maybe. Feels pretty good. Professionally, I made the decision also to delete social media because I was asking health and wellness 11th graders to try this digital detox, which some of you did in this panel. And so it just felt right on that level to say, like, okay, I've done it, now you try it. And that detox, you know, ranged from reducing screen time by 1 hour all the way to completely getting rid of apps on the phone or getting rid of social media completely.
Well, you know, it was interesting for me to watch the film because I work for Google, and you'd be surprised. I'm embarrassed to admit what I didn't know. What I learned in the film that I truly didn't know was that when you Google something, you get results that are just tailored to you. I can't. I'm embarrassed to admit that I really thought I was getting like an objective, like world's best bicycle, and I was getting Google filtering me the best bicycle I could find in the world. But I'm not. I'm getting best bicycle I could find in Los Angeles for me, who can't bike that fast and doesn't want to do mountain biking, like, you know, all the things they probably know about me. And you know, it affected me personally and professionally too. On the personal side, I immediately upon finishing the film found my 11-year-old and had a talk with her about social media that we really hadn't talked about how much is curated in social media and what that means, and how it's a short-term fake approval, and why I hardly ever go on Facebook, and I find Facebook to be just a bunch of braggarts, and how she has to look at it that way and not let her self-worth be determined by how she fits in. It was like high school and middle school is hard enough, and then to have it amplified and have everyone posting about a party you weren't inviting to, that just seems the worst. I can't even imagine how terrible that was, and that is it for kids, and I'm glad I didn't have to go through that. I work for YouTube as a programmer, and there's a lot you can say on YouTube's behalf that is good, as a couple of you hit upon, which I appreciated. YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice and show them the world. And anecdotally, when people come up to me when I say I work at YouTube, the thing I hear the most, which makes me feel good, is someone telling me what they learned on YouTube. And that is what I love about YouTube. Someone saying, it could be, my uncle called me and he said he fixed his garage door using a YouTube video. And I myself learned to tie a tie on my son one day when he needed me to tie a tie and my husband wasn't around. And whether it's cooking or you're dancing, there's so much you can learn. There's so many different educational videos. And that aspect of YouTube is I think wonderful. But social media and the whole cancel culture is just out of control and phony as you could see. So I enjoyed the movie though. I got a lot out of it, which surprised me on some level.
Thank you. And
one of the things that rang true to me was sort of, and I agree with Dr. Heitner about sort of, these are extreme portrayals of these kids, sort of the abstainer, and then you have the kid that gets sucked into the right wing thing or the extremist thing, and then you have the middle schooler. But as someone who's worked with teenagers for 20 plus years, that youngest daughter, about that one comment about her ears and how it really affected her and made her so sad for multiple days and worrying about her ears and all of that stuff. I mean, that's one thing that I appreciated seeing depicted in the film, because I think that those of us who are adults who didn't come up with this, it's hard for us to sort of recognize or feel the way that feels. And I wonder if any of the students can speak to that either way, but it feels very real. And so a lot of times I hear kids say to me, oh, my mom said I shouldn't worry about it. It's just a comment. It's just not real. It's not real life. But when you're in it, it is your real life. It does feel like your real life. And that was something that I appreciated about this film, that I thought maybe could be helpful for other parents who are trying to deal with their children.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, going back to what you were saying, Ms. Daniels, YouTube cooking videos have definitely helped me get through quarantine. But anyway, I wanted to shift over to talk about the evolution of social media, because I feel like that's definitely significant when having a conversation on the current social platforms that we utilize. So this is a question I think that Ms. Toure or Dr. Heitner could answer, of how has social media evolved and how has this evolution impacted the lives of so many young kids? And Ms. Daniels, if you want to also answer that, it's open to everyone.
Well, I would love actually to hear your legal perspective, Ms. Toure, because that's so different than my perspective. But just observing kids, I'll say one of the big changes is younger and younger. So, initially, like, Facebook was on college campuses, MySpace was used by some high school kids. And also, we have to remember, again, as you mentioned, that transition to broadband, which just really changed the experience. So kids who were using, like, the first college students I taught were using AIM and MySpace, but they were maybe dialing up, which, for those of you who are current students at Marlborough, I'll just tell you, is this like really annoying thing that we used to have to do to get on the internet, and it made it less fun. And potentially a conflict with being on the phone. And we also didn't have mobile devices that we carried around to use social media on. So people were using MySpace on a computer. So it wasn't with you all the time to kind of ping you. So I think the experiences of getting introduced to it at an older age, having it on a non-mobile screen initially, and then coming from dial-up to broadband, all of that is really different than being on, you know, a 4 or 5G network, potentially getting your first account by potentially not using your correct birth date, because there's laws about, you know, 13 and up, but we know that many kids are using social media, even in some cases, the single digits, you know, 9-year-olds on TikTok or Instagram, certainly many kids before 13. And yeah, so those are big differences. And then the things I worry about are, you know, kids kind of crowdsourcing their identity, you know, crowdsourcing their popularity, what Marissa Crandall mentioned, like that, the vulnerability to comments, which of course, if someone made a rude comment about your body or anything personal in person, that would sting. But someone might be more reluctant to be so bold as to be that rude to your face. And it would just be in a different context. The idea of people you don't even know, you know, boldly and cruelly commenting on what you say or what you do, or your, you know, a video that you shared is a very different thing. So again, like for, you know, a 9-year-old or even a 13-year-old to post a dance video on TikTok and have random strangers, you know, comment is a different experience than going to a dance recital and being there in person with everybody's parents, right? So anyway, there's a lot going on there. But social media can also be a lot of fun. And I think especially during this pandemic, a lot of kids are staying connected there, and we may not love everything about it, but that doesn't mean it's wholly a negative experience. And actually, a lot of the teenagers who are feeling less depressed and lonely during this time say that social media is a real source of sustenance for them. And that's research, you know, is out there saying that a lot of kids are staying in touch with their people. And that's really important.
I agree. You know, I think there are positives and negatives about social media. And I think that the documentary touched on that. You know, Facebook, just using that as an example, was created to build community. Like that was the mission. And so I'm a part of the dial-up generation. So I graduated from Marlborough in 2002. So using computers at Marlborough was not a thing. Having cell phones at Marlborough was not a thing. We used pencil and paper. So I'm sort of at that weird cusp between, you know, growing up without technology, having instant messenger like my junior and senior year of high school, you know, having a screen name, but it was just messaging my friends after school. And there was AOL Mail, but, you know, searching for information just wasn't like, I think we still went to the library to get information. We didn't, like, it didn't translate that everything could be in this home experience, this like very personal, insulated experience. And then, you know, I went to Yale for undergrad, and you guys remember when Facebook first came out in 2004, it was only available to Ivy League schools. And I remember when the platform popped up, it was called The Facebook, and it was just a white page with the Facebook at the top, and you could have your relationship status, your name, and it was a white box that you could type messages into your friends. So it was what text messaging is now. That's what Facebook started out as. Like, we had cell phones in undergrad, but it was like purely to call home. We made plans and actually showed up for them, like in person. We didn't like email or have a text out in any way. So the whole idea of messaging on Facebook was so strange. It was like, well, I'm going to see you in an hour. Why would I send you a message and then physically see you? We just didn't get it. And then you could upload pictures, but we all had digital cameras. So we had to then go to our laptops in our rooms. They were like 35 pounds, plug in the digital camera, upload the photos to like a drive, and then insert the photo into Facebook. And we were just like, what is the point of this? Why this is so much work, and we're not really any more connected than we are face to face. But it was a way to connect with other Ivy League kids, right? So I guess like that was the point, was to build connection. And then I remember when it opened up, I felt like something that was very, unique and special was now like gone. And then it was like you could type in, it was an I am line. So I am hungry, I am sad, I am shopping. And then it evolved from there into the newsfeed. So I think like, and I believe that was driven by advertising. And we saw that in the movie. One of the director of monetization said he was brought in 2004 because Google was one of the companies that everyone was in awe of, right? They had just bought YouTube. I remember being an undergrad being like, what is this company? That's crazy. How do you spend $2 billion on a startup? And so, hearing him talk about that he was brought in to figure out how to make money for the company, I think, that changed everything. And, I grew up quote unquote with Facebook, and I saw that, every now and again, things would just change randomly, like buttons and, news feeds and all of this. Now I understand is driven by the strategy. And I represent Facebook now. They're one of my clients, and they're now releasing hardware. So the social media platforms are now releasing devices that you can communicate on. So, Google has them, Amazon has them, Facebook has a portal. And I was on the marketing and advertising side of their legal work for the release of this device. And they were so concerned about making sure that they were not advertising to kids 13 and under, because if they did, then what's called COPA rules, there's a federal law that, gives very specific regulations, like, makes companies and websites and operators follow particular guidelines if they're advertising or in any way, like directly providing a service to kids under 13. So just seeing them so intentional about commercials and GIFs and animated ads and how they were targeting even to who was cast in it. I think the idea of building community is one thing, but it's now become an enterprise. And I don't want to say we've lost our way in it, but they're now like, vast negative consequences contributing to suicide rates and all these things. But at the end of the day, there's still companies that want to get in the Facebook business, that want to get in the Instagram business. Influencers are, the richest young kids that country's ever seen. And I do some influencer deals on both sides, on the company side and the talent side. And one of the points of negotiation is how that endorsement and sponsorship will look. I mean, there's, exhibits that are so specific as far as what the text is going to be, who's going to approve it, how the name and image and likeness of the talent is going to be used in the advertisement, how it can be reused, for how long, which platforms, Facebook stories, not Facebook posts, Instagram only, Snapchat twice. It's very specific, and it's brand driven. And, there are now guidelines around advertising. If you guys, don't know about the FTC, it's a federal agency that has published guides around how influencers and how brands are able to advertise to us. So they have to follow a bunch of rules now, which is new. That this is an evolution because of social media and how you can really sell a lot of products just by posting on Instagram. I mean, Kylie Jenner is like a perfect example of that, and the whole Kardashian their whole thing. They're going to be studied in business schools on how you can utilize social media. And there's some regulation, but not enough to counteract these consequences. But social media has evolved over time. I've witnessed it personally and professionally, and I'm not sure where I stand on it. I still have it on my phone and my computer, but I don't get notifications. So I think I maintain a distance. Like, I go on when I want to, but I find myself, I pick up my phone, I immediately click on the app, and it's designed that way, which really trips me out, because I know that that's the point, right? Is to engage me first. And I think they've won that battle from all apps. I think Facebook and YouTube have the monopoly over that algorithm.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's really hard to not open my phone and not go on like press that bright yellow button to go on Snapchat. I have to like pull my hand back and think about my decision. But that leads me to my next question for Ms. Daniels about what you think are some of the most important advancements the industry has made over the past decade, social media industry or maybe YouTube in particular.
Well, I just want to add one thing to the conversation that was just happening, which is that for me, the key is transparency. As long as everybody knows what the rules of the game are, then I think there's a fairness aspect to it. But when there's subliminal tactics and manipulation of the viewer, that's when I really have a big problem with social media and tech companies. And that's where I think that I'm actually for a lot of guidelines and regulation. But what do I think are the most biggest advancements? Okay, 3D printing blows my mind. I can't even understand how it can happen. No scientist can explain it to me. My brain doesn't work that way, but it's so amazing. It's unbelievable. And then I think this is an advancement that's happening. It's not happened yet, but the self-driving car I have a lot of hope for. I know there's been some debate about it and some accidents, but if you look at how certain people in my family drive, I'm not going to name any names in case they ever see this, but I think about that and I think I'd rather be in a self-driving car than drive with that person. I'd take my chances, and so I actually think that's a good thing, and I know that's one of Google's projects, among others. And then the gene editing system, the CRISPR, that's unbelievable too. Those are probably my top three.
Yeah, I'm very interested in self-driving cars. I'm very reluctant to get my permit just because of everything going on, but self-driving car, I'll keep that in mind for the future. For our student panelists, I was wondering what you guys think. What do you personally think is the most negative effect social media has had on you or those you know? And specifically, Shine and Leia, I know that you did a project on body image. I was in Shine's health class, so if you guys want to talk more about that, that would be really insightful for this conversation. If you guys want to start.
Yeah, I can start. For health and wellness, I did a project on body image and diet culture, specifically influenced by social media with Shine. And I think that is one of the most, it influenced me particularly a lot, which was why I did my project on that topic. But mostly, I discovered a lot of how like influencers and just like people in general, how diet and like how diets can like affect a lot of people, and how it can affect like your body image and also your self-confidence, and how influencers are getting paid to promote these diet products that they themselves don't use, and you don't know a lot of the things that go behind those cameras. You know what they use, what type of lighting, Photoshop, anything like that, but you believe what you see is that this diet is going to make you look like that, but you have no idea what's going behind it. And I think that's what, I mean, I don't want to say that it's affected me, but I think especially with me getting social media at such a young age, seeing it for multiple years and it building up, I've definitely seen it affect me to a point. Yeah.
I can go. Well, first of all, I think that they all are very important negative effects on social media. But I personally believe that false information is one of the most important negative effects on social media, because social media is the most efficient way to spread news. And one person can spread this faulty information instantly with just a press of a button. And we also don't know what information is faulty and what is true. And not knowing what is true and what isn't can cause millions of people to believe in this false news. For example, the film mentioned Kyrie Irving and how he clicked on a YouTube link that proved to him that the earth is flat, and this caused a huge waterfall effect on people who looked up to these celebrities and influencers to believe that the earth is flat. I mean, knowing that these many scientists have proved the earth is round. So I think this false information can just spread so quickly, and it can cause just a huge waterfall effect of so many people to believe in this faulty information.
I personally think that actually the most negative effect is these sites like tracking you and figuring out what websites you visit, what stuff you like, and all this stuff, because it's kind of like they're using your personal information to make money, and I don't really like that.
Corinne, did you have anything to add? Sorry, I saw you turned off your microphone. I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, I guess I can add to what Rachel and Brooke said. I agree with both of them. I definitely agree with the privacy aspect of that, because they kind of, social media or online websites create kind of another picture of you, and they kind of shape who you are in a way, and they impact you in ways that you never imagined, and it all kind of starts with the breach of privacy on you and who you actually are.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you guys said. I relate to all of them, especially body image, and I think body culture. Like, our diets are really dependent on the celebrities we follow, which is a product of social media. But moving on, how should Facebook, and the Facebook company, which also owns Instagram, be held accountable for promoting potentially harmful diet products, usually by celebrities? Ms. Toure, if you want to answer that question, or if
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the platforms can be held accountable, because there's a lot of regulations that absolve platforms from liability. The laws as they are in favor of the platforms and put the burden on the actual product to be what it says it will be. So
I think that once the company knows that the product is faulty, then the company should have a very short amount of time to get it off its platform. And it can be held responsible in that way.
I agree. And in most agreements there is, like, especially if there's an influencer or particular commercial advertisement that involves people promoting a product, usually contractually, like, there's a way to terminate your involvement in the particular product endorsement or advertising, whatever the commercial is, for breaches, and that company is representing and warranting that the product is what they're saying it is, which is what you're then saying as the influencer. So I agree, Susanne, that's that I think in, like, practically that ends up happening. The product then is responsible. But the social media companies, I mean, once they're put on notice, they should have within a 24-hour turnaround period to take down all advertisements and repost and retweets and all that sort of thing. But right now they're, it's very, very in favor of platforms. And I think it's just because there isn't regulation yet, like the platforms regulate themselves and they make more money than any company has previously. And, we're seeing before Congress, a couple of the gentlemen that were in the social dilemma and, other public advocates and people that are, trying to write policy on how to how to change or alter some of the consequences and hold these platforms responsible. But we're just not there yet. I think we're just starting to have the conversation. So I'm hopeful, especially with, you smart Marlborough women, that, you'll go into fields and you'll be civic leaders and you'll be able to effectuate some of this change, because you guys are the ones that are really the most affected, because you've grown up with it and your brains have been challenged in this way to, be influenced, but then also to do what you're doing now, which is to question whether or not you want to believe what you're seeing.
I think it's really important too. I mean, in addition to calling out things like diet culture, and we know literally that can be life and death and that people have died. So I don't want to minimize that. But I mean, genocide and, the attacks on the Rohingya people. And I mean, those cases have been heard by international human rights organizations. They've tried to reach out to Facebook. I think there is some culpability, and it's a choice to be that profitable and not hire a lot more content moderators. Those content moderations, like for those of us who've had to report bullying at a school or report, racist, xenophobic, misogynist, or homophobic content or other hate speech on social media, that the reporting process is not great. It's not that easy to get something taken down, and it's because the companies haven't made a huge financial priority of doing excellent content moderation and really hiring the numbers of people. The scale is woefully inadequate. As we're sitting here tonight, millions of people are uploading videos to YouTube, uploading videos to TikTok, posting on Facebook, and the scale of content moderation just isn't there to respond to threats, intimidation, and other content that really shouldn't be there, whether it's porn on YouTube Kids, whether it's, it just doesn't come down fast enough because it's more profitable to have a small content moderation department than a big one. And I'm gonna just put in a plug for journalism here. And, those of you who know me personally know that, like, my partner is in public radio. And so I may be biased in that department, but when you look at the number of journalists in the last 20 years and even in the last 5 years that have been laid off in the LA market alone, but also nationally and internationally, and the consolidation of media companies and what happens there, you also have a lot fewer people reporting a story, and a lot fewer people on a beat like climate or education. And so you have people with, diametrically opposed views, people in their filter bubble, and you have actually less access to vetted, solid reporting out in the world when you take a media company and take it over, lay off all the reporters, and a couple of people are like, well, I really want to go to the Oscars, and they're like, okay, that's not a good situation if you want to get the real truth. And so we have to look at what are we doing with organizations? How do we value getting actual information and reporting? And maybe we don't. Maybe it's not profitable. The old models, it really was disrupted. Like the internet did disrupt the whole model of having the LA Times and the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune and a lot of other newspapers supported by advertising has gone away. And, every time I share an article from, say, like the Wall Street Journal, people get really mad at me that they might have to pay 20 cents to see it. People are livid. Like, I have gotten really angry emails, like, you shared a link to an article in the New York Times and it was behind a paywall, right? Like, people are disgusted by that because they've been so trained that everything should be free. But we haven't figured out how to pay people to do that reporting for the New York Times and make everything free. So I'm not, free is great. I love free articles too, but I don't know how to get past that. Like, now that we've disrupted it, I don't know that we can just kind of be okay with the replacement, because we know that long form journalism, like another good movie to watch if you want is like the movie Spotlight or something, like go watch movies about what journalists were able to do to uncover truth in really sticky situations, and think about what it means to not have people on those stories, and to have, instead of 12 journalists work on something for 2 years, to have one person all by themselves, or a freelancer, going like to cover a dangerous situation and doesn't have, someone to fly them home if they get in a jam. It's a very tough world out there.
Something I want to add to that, you were talking about the financial incentives. One of the best ways to get the attention of platforms and media companies is through their shareholders. Like if the main shareholder in an organization is as concerned as we are, as the movie and other movies like it are, then that's the person that really can speak. Because I mean, the reality is that this is America is a capitalist culture, and that's not changing, whether we like it or not. At the end of the day, revenue per quarter is the name of the game, right? Shareholders want to see that. So as much as companies should be incentivized to do the right thing, there's always this dance and this battle between the ethics of something and the financial incentives to actually do something about the ethical values that someone's bringing up, as maybe the company's not living up to those standards. So there are, I think a good example of this is AT&T. When AT&T bought Warner Brothers, and there was the main shareholder who was not okay with who the CEO of this new conglomerate was. And I mean, he, published articles, he went on radio, he bought TV ads, bad mouthing the CEO, and that CEO's gone now. And then the new CEO was exactly who that main shareholder wanted, for whatever his interests are. But, there's something very powerful about the person that controls your majority share, or even your top 10% of shareholders. That's who I think should be targeted. People like you and I, aren't going to be able to push the needle of a major media company or conglomerate. We can write about it, we can blog about it, tweet, post, and all those things are effective. But that's a strong way, I think, that I'm seeing in this new age of streaming and everyone being on their computers, is like, who holds the purse strings. And it's turning out for some media companies that the top shareholders really have more say than they thought they have. I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up. So let's target those folks and get them to make ethical choices and focus there instead of on the bottom line every quarter.
Yeah, and I feel like now we kind of need to contrast the negativity that is inherent with the social media platforms, and we've had some questions from families and parents on how they can really manage and create a balance. And so a question, I think, for Ms. Beck, Dr. Crandall, and Dr. Heitner, and whoever else feels like they would like to answer this can definitely go ahead. But it's, how can a family best create a balance between the various uses of screen time, whether that be Zoom, social media, or work, and an off-screen life?
I have a
You're like,
daughter who can speak.
Dr.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say I have a 17-month-old, and she has discovered YouTube. And she has her favorite songs, and she makes this like little physical movement when she wants to watch. We call them her stories. Mm-hmm. And at first my husband and I were like, oh my God, she's too young to be, requesting this. And now we're just like, you know what? Like a lot of these that she's watching, she's learning how to count, she's learning ABCs, like her vocabulary has increased because she hears the same words over and over again, and then she gets the picture associated with it. And then we also make sure that she goes outside, like she goes to the park, and we take her on a walk, and we engage with her, over lunch and dinner. We're always talking to her so that she's hearing our voices in real time, and also via YouTube. So we're trying to accept that her brain's different than our brain, and that she wants to be engaged in this way. And we haven't seen any negative consequences from it besides what we read, right, about people warning us about what's going on. But we haven't seen anything happening yet. But we do try to just balance it with like what we did, like playing outside and playing with blocks and rolling around a toilet paper roll, things like that. That's what we're trying.
I'm on the board of Common Sense Media, and people should check out their website, because they have a lot of great guidelines, And one thing I adopted from their guidelines is device-free dinner. So no one's allowed to have their devices at the dinner table. And it's about, you know, setting boundaries, I think, and you have to set the boundaries that you feel comfortable with.
I agree, Susanne, and I think that one of the main things, and one of the things I appreciated about the movie is all these people saying, I know how this works and I still can't resist it. So I think it's sort of, and you know, this is one of the reasons why we have partnered with Dr. Heitner to provide so much education for our families and our kids, because it really, you know, and Dr. Heitner really talks about, and I'll let you speak, but you know, about mentoring rather than monitoring, right? Which is that this is part of these kids' lives. This is part of their lives forever. And developmentally, you know, they need to develop their own relationship with all of these things. And, you know, I'm a 52-year-old psychologist, and I still get addicted. I know all the ways these things work. I know all the addiction pathways. I know all of this stuff, and I still can get sucked into a, you know, into a rabbit hole. So I think acknowledging as a family that sometimes we need help with these things, that they are designed to get us to do more, even when that's to our own detriment, and then agreeing and having lots of conversations as a family about how do we help each other manage this? How do we help each other mitigate the negative effects and amplify the positive, the wonderful things that are out there? If you need to learn something, how do you go to YouTube and make sure that you're learning that and you're not being targeted by, you know, something else? So Devorah, I would love it for you to speak more, because this is your area.
A lot of us are struggling, and especially with the pandemic and, you know, so much more time with tech. But as much as possible, to encourage families not to lump all screen time into one bucket and really look at, you know, connection, creation, learning, all of these different ways we're using our tech. And so, you know, if your daughter is composing music, you might feel very differently and not like be counting the minutes that she's spending, unless it's interfering with her sleep, for example, or something else she needs to do. But you might feel like this is a passion project or a hobby, or, you know, her work. And so how much time would you let your kid play chess or practice swimming or anything else that they're strongly interested in? I mean, that said, if you have a really passionate gamer and it's interfering with their sleep or something like that, then absolutely it's our job as parents to help our kids learn to self-regulate. But for most kids, self-regulation doesn't mean handing them a bunch of connected devices when they're 12 and letting them have them 24/7 and saying, learn to self-regulate. It might mean that we're stepping in initially to help them with that quite a bit, but we're also stepping back over the years as they're getting prepared to launch and go away from us and be on their own and figure out, and including having those failures of self-regulation. And we've had them too, where we stay up and watch the extra Netflix, or we look at work email or doom scroll on Twitter right before bed and then can't sleep. And so and talking to kids about how, like, I've had to really change my relationship with news during the last, you know, year, and not look at it right before bed or I won't sleep. And making sure that I've talked to my 11-year-old about that choice and what that means for me, right? So we're not censoring the news from him. We're not suggesting we want to bury our heads in the sand, but maybe right before bed isn't the best time. Maybe that's a good time to read a novel or do something else with our minds. So I think it's really important to look at how our kids are using tech, what we're modeling as parents, making sure that we're not, you know, doing things that we don't want them to do, anything from like texting and driving to maybe like multi-screen, you know, distracted behavior. And when we think about the content, the choices our kids have are amazing. And I think this is one of the things that it's so much better than it was, and also much more difficult. Like, our parents really could I'm Generation X, raised by the TV, right? And I'm not a sociopath. I know a lot of other people who are raised by the TV who are not sociopaths. Like, the grand experiment is like, most of it didn't break us. And there was a lot of a much narrower world. You know, I couldn't see an ISIS beheading. I couldn't see, you know, someone ending their own life. I couldn't see like some of the horrible things that, you know, like violent pornography. Those things were not available to me on my television. You know, you could look at some of the MTV videos I grew up on and see why my mother thought they were in poor taste. But I think most of us would, you know, say hallelujah, thank you, if like the sort of most upsetting thing our kid could see is, you know, Madonna in a cone-shaped bra. We'd be like, okay, I can probably live with that, right? So I think that the wideness of what's available is amazing, because we can see so many more amazing girl and women characters in shows being heroes, for example, than what was available to me when I was a kid. and a much more diverse set of characters in terms of race and ethnicity, in terms of sexuality, right? All of those things are so much better. And there's all this stuff that we don't want them to see. So we have to really deal with this proliferation of content and encourage our kids to be makers. And, you know, if you don't like the way social media reflects body image, maybe you want to design a different kind of app or an alternative to social media, right? Maybe social media isn't the place you want to go. But I think a lot of you will write your own stories in different ways, whether, you know, whether that's in tech or in some other space. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in VR and gaming right now. So I wouldn't look at our kids' tech time in a negative way or in a positive way, but really look at how it's affecting them, what it's affording them, what it's allowing them to do. And certainly we also need to be our kids' safe space. So if our kids are having conflicts with friends or running into negativity, they need to be able to come to us. So we don't want to be in that sort of judging, scary role of like, I'm taking it away every time something goes wrong, but rather, how can I help you deal with distraction, right? Not like, gotcha, I saw you off task, but you know, I saw that you were off task, and that's happened to me before too. When I sit down to my computer, sometimes I get distracted. Let's think about some ways that we can help you stay focused, and what works for you. What's a good environment that's more focused? What's a way of using a device? Maybe you do need to take it offline some of the time. So I think it's really important to give kids a lot of feedback and support, and also be a resource to them. But we don't want to be that external limiter in the world we're in right now, because that doesn't really prepare them to be out there. And that's why, again, in the film, the folks who were talking about just keeping their kids totally unplugged, like, I hope they have some transition plan that they, you know, that got cut out the many hours of interviews, because that's not a really great strategy in the long term to prepare kids to live in the world we have.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you answered my next question, which was, do you recommend Marlborough students going into tech? And clearly the answer is yes. If that is your passion, I can see everybody nodding your head. But kind of going into that deeper, what advice would you give youth looking to pursue a career in this field?
Oh, I would say, I think mentorship is still, at least for me, it's been pivotal in helping me see the possibilities. So I think as a Marlborough student, you guys are way more evolved and amazing than I was, by a long shot, just because of what's available to you. But I think that the alumni community is so involved with you guys as girls, and I think those of us that are in the tech space, or peripherally in the tech space, you know, want to be helpful and, you know, want to introduce you to people. So I think, you know, forming some good relationships as early as you can, you know, maybe not too early, because you might not know what you want to do, but I think, you know, beginning to make friends with women and men that are interested in what you're interested in. I think you guys can, you know, hear different paths and get excited about possibilities, and maybe the job that you want isn't available yet, but, you know, you might be able to create it yourself. So I think, you know, getting connected to people that share those interests, whether they're your age or older than you, I think will keep you sort of in the zone for doing this as a career in some capacity.
Thank you so much. Also, I'm one of the leaders of Career Connections at Marlborough, which is a club dedicated to bringing in professionals from various backgrounds that tailor to different student interests. So I would encourage people to join that club if you want to bring in a speaker and learn more about a profession that you're interested in or passionate, especially with tech as it's currently growing. And for our final wrap-up question, I really would like everyone to answer it. And I think people kind of have answered it throughout today's discussion, but do you guys have a social media platform? And if you do have social media platforms, why do you continue to use it after watching the documentaries and kind of learning from there how it can negatively but also positively affect your emotional well-being.
Well, I have a Facebook account, and I accept all friend requests. So I have thousands of friends, most of whom I've never met before. And I only use it to publicize things I'm working on. I started it when 10 years ago, my 24-year-old was turning 12 or 13 or 14, I can't remember, and wanted a Facebook account. And I said she could only have one if she friended me and I could see everything she was posting. And we had a long talk about how everything she posts on Facebook could be on the cover of the New York Times. And she had to think about it that way. And then once I realized she was using it safely and I really didn't have to monitor her, didn't feel that she was using it in any negative way, I just thought, how can I take advantage of this platform? So, you know, I had a conversation with a friend recently who said that they told me a similar anecdote to the anecdote one of the panelists told about how they got a puppy and they started getting all the ads for everything to do with the puppy. And my friend was saying, I like that. That makes my life easier. They know what I'm doing and they support me with information that I need. And I don't think about it that way. I thought that was funny. I still get unsettled by it when it happens and feel that it's an invasion of privacy. But to each their own. And again, I go back to transparency. So I feel comfortable the way I use Facebook, and because I just essentially use it for work.
I will share. So I have WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, and Pinterest. Those are the four. And I have Twitter also. Twitter I don't use at all because it's very overwhelming and I can't follow. I don't understand how it works. I can never type in the character amount allotted, but it's still there and I still have an account, but I would say I'm an inactive user. I have WhatsApp because some of my clients travel internationally, and so we're able to talk on WhatsApp for free. And I have a cousin that lives out of the country who's like a brother to me. So it's really for like international calling. Instagram, I love seeing people's pictures. It's just a really nice, I'm super visual. And so I just like scrolling and seeing what people are doing. And I use it as my own photo album. So that if I go back in time, I can see like what was going on. And it's great for videos of my daughter. So I post a lot of those because I like to just go back and look at them without having to scroll through my iPhone. Facebook, like Susanne, I use primarily for work, like as a promotional tool, what clients are doing, what I'm doing. So it's really for that. I very rarely post news articles or like political commentary. I did a little bit more like when George Floyd got murdered and Breonna Taylor, I did use it as like to vent for me personally, but I typically don't do that. It's usually just photos and like work stuff.
Thank you. Brooke?
I have Instagram and TikTok. I know a lot of teens or kids my age probably have both of those. I recently got Instagram, as I honestly don't use it as much. I look at my friends and family's lives and what's going on, but I'm not on Instagram as much as I am on TikTok, which I do spend hours watching mindless videos. And after watching this film, I definitely have spent less time watching these videos. I personally don't post on my account. I know a lot of my friends do, and my friends post on my account as well. But I don't use social media too much. I sort of restrict myself, and I have screen time as well. So I also don't spend too much time on social media.
Thank you. I feel like, I don't know if you guys use it, but I think for Apple phones, there's like a screen time limit, so you can set a limitation. And that has been my saving grace during quarantine, so that I do not spend 16 hours on TikTok. Shine.
Right now, my only social media is Snapchat, because as Ms. Speck mentioned earlier about the social media detox, I did that with Instagram where I deleted it off my phone and it's still deleted. And so, yeah, it's helped me spend a lot less time on my phone. And Snapchat is just something I can't let go of just yet because it's something I used to talk to my friends. So, yeah.
Thank you. Leia.
Yeah, I have Instagram and Snapchat. I use both of them quite a lot. Well, less frequently just because I've been more educated on the harms and just been more focused on school. But I think the reason why I continue to use it, even after I've gone through like month-long breaks of not using any social media, is because I found that the good outweighs the bad personally for me, in terms of I'm able to connect with friends across the country. I'm able to, especially during like the George Floyd death that someone mentioned earlier, I was able to connect with people who are also going through similar things or emotions that I was going through, and also be connected to like protests that were going around and how I can advocate for people and how I can be more involved in these political issues. And it's kind of caused me to become more involved in political issues than I've ever been before. And I'm very thankful for that because I'm not as oblivious or gullible to things that I was before. And I think that made me stay on social media as for now, because I've become so much more educated on so many more things.
Thank you. Rachel.
So basically, I have an Instagram and I was about to get TikTok, but I didn't because I knew someone who was spending hours on there and I can't control myself. So I know that if I downloaded it, I would probably also spend hours on there. And in my Instagram, I don't post anything. I just follow my friends and look at other people.
Yeah, kudos to you for not downloading TikTok, because that has definitely been a disruptor. Karenna.
I don't have social media, one, because I'm too young to have social media. And one thing I learned at my old school was that you should never lie about your age, because that can cause a lot of problems later. And also, one of my parents has not had social media ever in his life. And then my mom has Facebook and Instagram, and she doesn't advise me to have any social media just because she knows how addicting it can be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice. And speaking of advice, Miss Daniels, when you were talking about how anything you post, like imagine it being on the cover of the New York Times, my dad still tells me that every day. So it's constant advice in my family. Dr. Heitner.
I use a lot of stuff because of the work that I do. So I also use Discord because I have an 11-year-old son who uses Discord, for example. So I probably wouldn't be like a major Discord person. The podcast apps, I use mostly iTunes, but I also use some other like Pocket Casts and some other podcast apps a lot. And then in terms of social media, I'm probably the most excited about Twitter because the education conversations on there and the sort of digital citizenship conversations on there are great. There are definitely some rabbit holes to avoid there for me too. And there are times where I have to take a break from Twitter because it can get pretty heated. But the nice thing about Twitter is you can be really focused on the thing you want to be in conversation about. And it's, I find like I really feel like I understand how to use Twitter now, and it's so much fun, but also, can be a little tricky. I actually, there's a lot of great stuff on YouTube, as much as I, struggle with how to counsel families to use YouTube safely. And I've heard so many stories about YouTube that are great and others that are, challenging. So I'd love to talk more with you, Susanne, about it, because it's such an incredibly powerful platform. But that is where people go to like see me speak and hire me as a speaker. So it's really important that I have videos on there. LinkedIn, I think for a lot of people who are current students, age probably looks like the most boring party in the world. But one thing that's great on LinkedIn is if you have a weird path, which I definitely did, like I went to college when I was 16, I studied something completely different than what I do now, is you can really see how many people took a very crooked and complex path to where they are if you go and check them out on LinkedIn, because you'll be like, oh, that politician was like has a BA in art history or whatever. And it will kind of blow your mind. And I think maybe relieve some of the pressure, even though you might think LinkedIn would like drive up the career pressure, it might actually make you feel less stressed to just check some people out on LinkedIn to see all the wacky things that they did before they got where they are, that most people are not on that kind of like linear path. So I think that's really important. That said, if you're in 7th grade and you're like, I don't really want to check LinkedIn, like that's fine too. I'm not saying like you must do that. I'm just saying it could be fascinating in a weird kind of way. Facebook is where all the mom groups are. So I hang out in a lot of specific mom groups on specific topics, and local Facebook during the pandemic has also been a lot of mutual aid, book swaps, all kinds of things. So I find like the more local networks really great. I'm so bad at Instagram and Snapchat, but I have them because I've written about them, but they're mostly usable on your phone. And I'm actually someone who still does almost all of my computing, including social media, on my laptop. And so Instagram, for example, really is not that fun to use on a laptop. But I do love seeing people's cute children and puppies and stuff.
I was going to jump in and say I work on original content for YouTube, and we actually have a show in development, which is tentatively titled Resume Tours, which is about exactly that, which is about people who took really circuitous routes to get somewhere.
I would love to hear more about it later. Yeah, I mean, because all of this stuff, and I think the messages that we give kids about their permanent records are also a little overwhelming and scary. So I just want to say, obviously you want to put the best version of yourself out there and you want to be aligned with, what you put out there, but also it's okay to be in 7th grade when you're in 7th grade. You don't have to come across like a grown-up.
And also in California, there's a bill was passed that allows anyone under the age of 18 to wipe all of their content. So if you are, for whatever reason, if you are worried about like what people think about you or what effect it's going to have on your life, you can always get rid of it. So post away.
That's very interesting. I never knew that. 6th grade me is thanking you for that, because there are some really not pretty photos of my face in 6th grade. Anyway, Ms. Beck, I know you talked earlier about social media and your platform, but if you just want to reiterate, I'd be really happy to hear that.
I realized I fibbed. I do still have Pinterest. I look at some backyard ideas and such, but I also didn't consider that WhatsApp is social media. But it's like when you don't post, I guess I don't consider it social media, but that's not really the definition of it. I have WhatsApp. I have a lot of friends who live internationally, so that's how I keep in touch with them. I also have WeChat because I have friends who live in China, and that's the only form of communication with them. So I apologize for my earlier untruth, but I am taking accountability for it.
Oh, good. Thank you, Ms. Beck. I love Pinterest. Dr. Crandall.
I have a lot of these things. And mainly because I try to learn the main ones that my students are using. And when my children were younger, I would sort of try and join it, before they joined it. I recently quit Facebook. I quit Facebook, I guess, a year and a half ago. And I actually do miss some things. Like there's a lot of professional things or mom things that have Facebook groups that I now can't access. So I've been doing a lot more of my local stuff on Nextdoor, which is a very, very local social media and which I love. Other than sort of the pitchforks and torches that can come up on there, I really like it. There's mutual aid. There's sort of, Just we have there's a treat map for Halloween, so I really like Nextdoor. I have recently come back to Twitter, and I think it's similar to what Dr. Heitner was saying, because I can titrate it sort of to the things that I really want to hear about, and I just like it. I started using Twitter years and years ago, sort of as my folder for articles that I wanted to keep. I would just tweet them, and then that way I knew they were out there. I had them in a place. I have Instagram. I don't use it much. I pretty much lurk on there. Snapchat, I have it. I rarely use it. Again, that was really just to spy on my children when they were younger. TikTok, same. Like my kids will send me TikTok videos and I'll watch them, but I don't have an account, and I would never post anything on there. LinkedIn I like. And I think more and more, for an adult professional, there's other people that are putting content on there. That's great. And, I love to see, I've had people who have reached out to me and said, oh, I see you know this person. So it's like the Yenta in me really sort of loves that part of LinkedIn and how I can connect people professionally. I have Pinterest, but I don't usually use it. Yeah. That's probably mostly it. I don't use a lot of these things, but I still have them because I like to know how they work.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. And a special thanks to Miss Davis, because she worked closely with me to help come up with the questions and phrase them. So she's just been the best mentor. And she's also my advisor, and she's just the greatest. So, and thank you to all the panelists. I've learned so much from all of your contributions, and this has just been a really great and meaningful discussion. So thank you.
I want to echo Eva's thanks to all the panelists. Thank you for spending so much time with us this evening. And to everyone who joined us this evening, we are so glad you were able to listen to this conversation. Again, if you have other thoughts or questions, we welcome the conversation to continue. And we hope you have a really wonderful rest of your evening and week. Shout out to Eva too for all the work that she put into making this panel possible. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.